Okay, Programming 11, we are back and we're making our ripples now. So I'm making a new sketch. Here we go. Brand new sketch. And I'm going to start by, I'll make a new tab here. This will be my ripple tab. And remember what a ripple is really a class that's going to sort of define we've been calling it a cookie cutter to create many similar objects. Just like a cookie cutter, you know, it's a metal thing that you stamp into the dough. Well, a class is like a rigid structure that you stamp into the computer's memory and produce sort of copies of identical things, ripples. They won't be identical in terms of the data they store, but in terms of their, what kind of data and what kind of actions they can do, then they are all related that way. So I'm going to make our class ripple over here, and over here we're going to have basically the same stuff as we have in our main tab. I'm actually going to copy our stars over. Check this out. I'm going to copy it over. Nope, that's not. That's not. Whoa, I got so many things. Here we go. I'm going to paste this in, and I'm going to just kind of go through line by line, just changing things. So first of all, we're not going to have a star array. We're going to have a ripple array. I think first I'm just going to rename my stars to my ripples. Rename. There's rename. There it is. My stars isn't defined in this sketch. Oh, maybe because star isn't. So let's put in ripple here. And let's rename to my ripples. So that's going to just change it all over the place. And it's not going to be num stars anymore. It's going to be the number of ripples we have. All right. And let's take a look at our setup. So I'll leave the size, roughly the same. Rex mode center doesn't really matter because our ripples are circles. HSP color mode doesn't really matter because it's black and white. No stroke really does matter. We don't want no stroke. But our circles are hollow. So what's going on there? That means they have no fill. So we can replace no stroke with no fill. What is the number of our stars? Well, it's not number of stars anymore. It's number of ripples. Sure, 200, whatever. We'll start with 200. And then my ripples equals new ripple array. And it'll be num ripples. I wish I had just renamed that up here. It's going to have a number of places. Here's our loop. So we're from I to number of ripples, making a new ripple. But notice otherwise not much changed, right? Like we're changing the word star to ripple over and over again. But this loop is still effectively the same loop. It didn't change very much. And that's going to be true for just about everything we do throughout these projects. In the draw function, I got that fancy fade thing. I think I'm going to turn that off for now. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like if we turn it on again. But I'll bring over background 0. I'll put that in draw this time. And then here's this. I'm just going to change this to num ripples. And this is all going to be the same. We're going to still have a show and an act function. So, yes, some things changed, but the overall structure of our main tab looks very, very similar to the previous STARS project. And guess what? They're going to look similar in just about every project we do. If we look again and again, it's going to be the same thing over and over again in many ways in the main tab. What's going to change is our class. By changing our class, we're really defining what these things can do, what information they need to know. That is going to make a big difference in how these projects look. So a lot of the actions happening inside of the class itself. So let's do it. We're going to be making, first of all, our instance variables, or fields, as some people call it. I can spell. Different words, same meaning. So they'll definitely need an X and Y. And we also talked about how they needed a size as well. So that's great. Let me just turn up the volume. I don't know if that affects anything. I hope it doesn't affect anything. We need a size. And do we need anything else? I mean, there's the fade value as well. So I think we'll solve this problem without any fading, and then we'll add the fading in later on. But yes, we are going to need some kind of like transparency variable. Usually people call it alpha. It's like a Photoshop term, I guess, for how transparent something is. Okay, so that's our variables. So now I have a constructor. And again, constructors are basically just the name of the class and then the trappings of a function. It is a function. Just you would normally put void in front of a function, but constructors don't have any return type, not even a void return type. So when we make our ripple, we are going to say something along the lines of let's randomize our x position from 0 to width. You can actually just say width. That'll assume 0 is your floor and width is the ceiling of your choices. We'll make y a random number from 0 to height. And we'll make the size a random number. And I don't know what the range is off the top of my head. I'm going to say 0 to 200. I'm not too sure. You might be wondering, hey, how come our ripples don't start out tiny? When the raindrop hits the water, shouldn't the raindrop start tiny? Well, we're going to assume this sketch begins sort of 1 hour into a rainstorm, and we're just turning on our camera, so to speak, in the middle of the storm. So if we were to immediately start filming a puddle with raindrops in it, some of the ripples would already be forming, some would be big and wide, and so on. So we're going to randomize that. All right, so now that we've made our constructor, we can, I guess alpha doesn't have a value yet, but we'll come back to alpha later. Okay, so now we're going to make our behavior functions. Behavior functions, there we go. And there's basically void show and void act are the ones we've been making. And show us how it looks. So we're basically going to have a stroke that is white, and the stroke weight is 1. And this is going to be true for the entire project, so you might, consider taking that and putting it in setup, because it's not going to change at all. So you can just stick it in your setup, so that you don't have to do it over and over again. Might make your project a little bit more efficient. So I'm going to put in an ellipse. It's going to be drawn x and y, and I guess it's going to have a width of size and a height. A height of size divided by 2. That'll give it its flattened look as opposed to a big circle. It'll kind of look like it's been tilted a bit. So that's basically all we got to do for show. Later on, we will have some of this alpha stuff, so that'll be important. For act, it just grows. Size equals size plus whatever number you think is appropriate. I'll say 3, just as a guess. I don't know if that's too fast or too slow. And then we have to say if it reaches a certain size. So if size is greater than 200, we'll say. We could do greater or equal to 200, but we can't do exactly equal to because we don't know what its starting size is. It's a float, so it might be like 0.5. So if we add 3 to 0.5, we're never going to get to 200. So we'll make it if it's greater or equal to 200. And then it needs to be re-randomized. So basically all these things need to be re-randomized except for size. In this case, we do want a random x and y, but when we reset our ripple to go back to a tiny ripple to begin again, it does need to be set back to 0 for its size. So that'll help a lot. All right, so there's no transparency, but let's see what this looks like. There we go. Oh, wow. 200 is a bit large. But you can sort of see what's going on here. I'm going to bring it down to 50 ripples. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So our ripples are kind of going and popping, and they're looking nice and circular. So that's pretty good. I'll just mention that if you had randomized your size here, I think a lot of people probably are wondering why that might be. If we just randomize it, then when they restart, they'll just restart as like, they'll just look like they're flopping and flipping and flopping, right? They're just disappearing and reappearing somewhere else with a big size, and that doesn't make sense. That doesn't look natural. So we don't want any size when they restart. They want to begin as a tiny ripple. And this looks much more natural to us. It still looks kind of goofy because they just poof, disappear. So let's go add in that extra aspect. So we do want to have the alpha value, and we do want to have our stroke, calculating it. We do want to have 255, and we want to include alpha in here. But alpha right now is always 0, so we need to sort of figure out what it's going to be. And I think we'll use the map function for it. So we'll say alpha equals a map. We're going to map the size, which ranges from 0 to 200, and we'll map that to an alpha. And remember, alpha ranges from 255, which is solid, I believe, and 0 is invisible. So when the ripple is really tiny, that's when it's its most solid. So we're going to map that to 255. And when the ripple has expanded out to its largest size, it goes invisible. So that's going to be the 0 here. So basically our size will determine how transparent it is. That's the range of size, and that's the matching range for our transparency. So if we run that, we'll get some cool looking ripples that will sort of disappear. And I like how when you're looking at this, it sort of has almost like an after image. Like when it gets to a certain size, we sort of don't see it anymore. Hey, there you go. Look at that. We got some ripples going on. Woo, woo, woo. So hopefully you had some success with that. Here's something for you to try. Maybe make a few changes to this. I think something interesting would be, what if the ripples came to the mouse pointer when they recycled? What would that look like? So try to change it so that whereas the mouse moves around, or it doesn't even matter if it's moving or not, but when the ripples are reborn, they don't go to a random X, they go to mouse X, mouse Y. I think that'll be a really interesting effect. Also, try to change it so your ripples aren't just black and white, but they have some kind of color. They remember their color from one frame to the next. So that's your task. Give it a shot. I'll have another video that'll show you how you can do that, but basically that's a good place to start in understanding how this stuff is working, by making some changes to the structure to test your understanding. So go give those a shot, and check out the next video to see the answer if you get stuck. Thanks, everybody.